Hello, everybody. Again, welcome to class. I'm Dr. Matthew Irvin. I'm your course facilitator here for the Sociology of Social Problems. I want to discuss what it means to start now, to start narrowing your focus a bit. In this initial discussion, it's no problem. We're just exploring a topic. But I want to contrast. A lot of folks are saying, I think I want to think about racism. Okay. Well, sadly, racism is a pretty gigantic topic. I said in a couple of posts that the preeminent American sociologist W.E.B. Du Bois wrote 126 books about it, and he wasn't finished, at the end of his life when in the 1960s in Ghana. His life spanned like 70 years, and his professional career spanned 70 years. So, right, yes, racism is bad. Let's take it a little further. And to take it further, I want to use an example from one of your classmates, LaTanya Wilson here, who's done an outstanding job. Clearly, she's concerned with racism as well. But let's look over how she's approaching this, and to my way of thinking, very correctly. Okay. She shows the topic of healthcare disparities with a focus on racial bias. Now, this is racism. But this is a slice of this massive set of challenges. Okay, and she wrote down okay, she's written a really outstanding post, and I would direct you all to read this for an example, whatever you're doing, and how to do a post here. In terms of healthcare, health disparities, inequities in healthcare. That's what we call structural racism. Okay. And she's even got a couple of references down here, which is really outstanding. So I'm gonna task you as we move forward. Again, we're just in our initial discussion, so you're playing with ideas, but you can't just write, something is bad. Okay, you have to narrow your focus. Okay, racism. You can't. You would write. We don't have time to write 126 books about it. We do have time to narrow our focus, as LaTanya has here. LaTanya, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. And tackle one piece of this massive. It's not a problem. It's a constellation of problem. Structural racism in the United States. Okay. So, as we're thinking about that, I like to draw on examples. Just think of her example. Some other folks have said, well, drug addiction is bad. Well, addiction is another gigantic thing. So let's narrow, if addiction is another thing that's pervasive in American society. So if you're talking about drug addiction, focus on, there are different aspects of it. The fentanyl problem, the opioid epidemic, which is substantially different than, for example, methamphetamines, which is also a problem. So take some aspect of the drug addiction as a social problem and narrow your focus and address some aspect, and be as focused here on whatever you're doing as LaTanya is. Keep this in mind. Again, for our initial discussions, we're just getting to know each other. you know, I'll offer you some friendly advice. It's not, it's just, you know, and this is a great time for us to look at examples such as LaTanya's example here, or, you know, for us, you and I, to have a discussion about what's going on. I had another excellent discussion about, with one of our students, let's see, one of our fellow students, about, let's see here, down here. I'm going to go down the list. Okay. Another excellent discussion I had was with Amari Abdullah. I'm sorry, Amani Abdullah. Amani, my apologies for mispronouncing your name. And again, you know, what she's looking at, and so we had a great discussion here. I draw your attention to her discussion, her point is the kind of structural Islamophobia or anti-Muslim sentiment in kind of the West, the United States and Western Europe. And she brought up a critical point, and we worked through this in our dialogue, and that was that people, you know, Muslims, you know, from Islamic countries who are refugees from war-torn situations, kind of like we're seeing in this Ukrainian tragedy, you have been treated a little differently, at least on the first point of demarcation, which is Western Europe, and certainly in the United States, than have people from this recent tragedy. Okay, and this goes back to the Yugoslavian Civil War, but you could compare the way people fleeing the kind of Russian violence and brutality from the Ukraine are being treated better in their reports than were people from similar violent situations in Yemen, in Syria, in Afghanistan, and Iraq, for example, where people were fleeing and they were not handled well. You know, they're also from the Sudanese, the war in the South Sudan, right? You know, same deal. People fleeing, and indeed, even in the United States, there was a reticence to take in people who had worked pretty tirelessly, you know, on behalf of the American government from some of these places. So she's looking at that she's doing, and you know, what she's done is she's come up with a comparison. Amani is doing a comparison here. You know, I mean, and so, you know, so we'll look at this. You know, I would look at this as a good exchange for thinking about your final project. We're beginning very early to do that. Now, again, you know, if you've thought in general terms, that's great. What that does in your discussion, if you've said racism or bullying or addiction, these are topics where I'm going to direct you to narrow your focus, and that's fine too for this first discussion. So welcome to class, and I hope this little video has helped you. Take care, and please communicate with me if you have any questions. Thanks.